Hey everyone, let's take a deep dive into the Azeez Al-Shaair suspension. It's a story that goes beyond a simple penalty. We're talking player safety, sportsmanship, and how the NFL handles repeat offenses.
Definitely. A lot to unpack here, especially with the league's emphasis on protecting quarterbacks.
Absolutely, this situation really highlights that. Can you remind us who Azeez Al-Shaair is and why he's been suspended?
Azeez Al-Shaair is a linebacker for the Houston Texans. He received a 3-game suspension for a hit on Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. The incident occurred during their game on December 1st.
I see. And can you take us through the specifics of the hit that led to this suspension?
Al-Shaair hit Lawrence in the head while he was sliding. This led to Al-Shaair being ejected from the game and ultimately resulted in the 3-game suspension.
That sounds pretty serious.
Yeah.
Why is hitting a sliding quarterback considered such a major offense in the NFL?
Sliding is a protective measure for quarterbacks. When a quarterback initiates a slide, the defense is expected to hold back and avoid contact to prevent potential injuries.
Right, player safety is crucial.
Exactly. And hits to the head are a particular concern for the league because of the risk of concussions and the long-term health consequences.
Of course. So what was the NFL's official response to the incident? And what reasons did they give for the suspension?
NFL Vice President of Football Operations Jon Runyan issued the suspension. His statement stressed that Al-Shaair had ample time and space to avoid contact with Lawrence.
So the NFL is making a statement. It wasn't just an unfortunate accident.
It was deemed unnecessary and reckless, putting the quarterback's safety at risk.
What impact will this suspension have on Al-Shaair and the Texans, practically speaking?
The Texans are heading into their bye week, so Al-Shaair will be out for games against the Dolphins, Chiefs, and Ravens. He'll be eligible to return for the final game of the regular season against the Titans.
That's a tough stretch of games to be sidelined for. How big of a loss is this for the Texans, given Al-Shaair's role on the team?
It's significant. Al-Shaair is a key defensive player for them. He was having a really strong season. 68 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles in just 10 games.
Those are impressive stats. Is there any chance of him returning sooner? Or is the 3-game suspension definite?
Al-Shaair plans to appeal the suspension. However, it's unlikely to be successful.
And why is that? What makes the appeal a long shot?
Runyan's statement pointed to previous incidents involving Al-Shaair, labeling him a repeat offender.
So a pattern of behavior.
This suggests a pattern of behavior that the league is taking very seriously.
Can you remind us of those previous incidents that might be influencing the league's decision?
Earlier this season, Al-Shaair delivered a late hit on Chicago Bears quarterback Caleb Williams. There was a scuffle afterward where he threw a punch, and he was also fined for a late hit on Titans running back Tony Pollard in Week 12.
So a history of questionable plays. How are the Texans doing this season? And can they realistically make the playoffs without Al-Shaair for these crucial games?
The Texans are currently 8-5 and have a 2-game lead in the AFC South.
Okay.
It'll be a challenge, but they're still in a strong position for a playoff spot.
That's good news for Texans fans. But losing a key player like Al-Shaair definitely complicates things. It makes you wonder if this suspension could be a turning point in his career.
It definitely raises questions about his future and how he'll adapt his approach to the game.
It'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds. This incident brings to light a broader conversation about player safety and how the NFL handles repeat offenders.
Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack here in terms of player responsibility and the evolution of the game.
Definitely. It sounds like we have plenty to discuss in the next part of our deep dive.
There certainly are. A lot of layers to consider.
Let's start with the appeal. What are the grounds on which Al-Shaair is basing his appeal?
Al-Shaair argues that the hit on Lawrence was unintentional. His representatives say he was attempting a legal tackle.
That's interesting given the circumstances of the play and his history. Do you think this defense will hold up?
It's hard to say. The NFL has a very specific definition of what constitutes a legal hit. Al-Shaair's previous infractions could work against him.
It could set a precedent. The outcome of this appeal. What will the NFL be looking at when reviewing this hit?
They'll review the play in detail. To try to figure out the intent behind the hit, they'll need to determine whether Al-Shaair followed the rules based on their definition of a legal hit.
Right. Shifting gears back to the Texans. How do you anticipate the team approaching the next 3 games without Al-Shaair?
They have a very talented defensive unit, but losing a key player like Al-Shaair will create challenges.
Absolutely. What adjustments do you see the Texans making to compensate for his absence?
They'll likely rely on a mix of experienced players and younger talent. It'll be a team effort.
Are there any specific players you think might step up in Al-Shaair's absence?
Linebacker Christian Harris could see an increased role. Rookie Henry Tutua might also get more playing time. It's a chance for them to prove themselves.
Interesting to see how their roles evolve. Do you think the Texans will need to make any significant changes to their defensive scheme?
They may make minor adjustments, but I think they'll stick to their core defensive principles.
Makes sense. Their upcoming opponents will be tough. What specific challenges do the Dolphins, Chiefs, and Ravens present for the Texans' defense?
The Dolphins have a powerful passing attack, led by Tua Tagovailoa, and of course the Chiefs. They have one of the most dynamic offenses in the league, Patrick Mahomes at the helm.
And then there's the Ravens, with their explosive run game, led by Lamar Jackson. That's a lot of firepower to handle.
Yeah.
How crucial is it for the Texans to adjust their defensive strategies for each opponent?
It will be absolutely critical for them. Each of those teams presents a different challenge to the Texans' defense. How well they adapt will be a major factor in their success.
The Texans have their work cut out for them. Can they maintain their lead in the AFC South despite this setback?
It won't be easy, but the Texans have been resilient all season. It's certainly possible.
What will be the key factors to their success in these upcoming games?
Their defensive performance will be crucial. They need to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks and prevent big plays.
On offense, what would be key for them to stay competitive?
Offensively, they need to move the ball effectively and avoid costly turnovers. Every possession counts in these matchups.
Absolutely. Special teams often gets overlooked, but it can make a difference in a close game. How much emphasis do you think the Texans will need to place on special teams play?
Special teams will be vital. Every point will be precious in these close games. They can't afford any slip-ups.
Sounds like all three phases of the game need to be on point. How confident are you in the Texans' ability to rise to the occasion without Al-Shaair?
The Texans are a well-rounded team. They'll need to be at their best to overcome this challenge. They'll have to step up in Al-Shaair's absence.
It's getting an exciting 3 weeks of football. What are your final thoughts as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
This is a defining moment for the Texans. The next 3 games will truly test their depth and determination.
And for Al-Shaair, this suspension raises important questions about his future in the league. How much will this impact his reputation and career trajectory? Definitely a turning point for him. This incident has sparked a lot of conversation about player safety and disciplinary actions in the NFL.
It really has, and it brings up some important points about how the league is changing its approach to protecting players.
The league seems to be taking a strong stance on these kinds of hits. What are your thoughts on the balance between protecting players and keeping the game exciting?
It's a tough balance. The NFL has to make sure the game is safe for the players, but they also have to keep the intensity and the physicality that make the sport so captivating.
It's a difficult issue, with no easy solutions. Do you think incidents like this one will lead to more rule changes or adjustments in how the game is officiated?
It's certainly possible. The NFL is constantly looking at its rules and making changes to prioritize player safety. This incident could lead to more discussion and potential changes.
This case has highlighted the difficulties of officiating these types of hits in real time. How much do you think the speed and complexity of the game play a role in those on-field decisions?
It's a huge factor. Officials have to make decisions in a split second. On plays that happen so fast, it's not an easy job. There's always going to be room for debate and different interpretations.
Absolutely. Looking beyond this particular case, how do you see the NFL's stance on player safety evolving in the years to come?
I think we'll see a continued emphasis on player protection, especially when it comes to head injuries. The league is working to reduce risks, and I expect that to continue.
It'll be interesting to see how technology plays a role in those advancements. As we wrap up our deep dive, what are your key takeaways for our listeners?
This incident is a reminder that player safety is the top priority. The league is sending a message that dangerous actions will have consequences.
And for players like Al-Shaair, this is a time to reflect on how they approach the game and make responsible play a priority.
Exactly. It's also a reminder that the NFL is always evolving. The rules, how the game is played, and the league's stance on player safety can all change.
It's a dynamic sport. And this incident gives us a chance to examine those changes and think about their impact on the game.
It's been a great discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your insights. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.